What happens when you experience something so traumatic and terrifying that later on you start doubting yourself if it really happened? Okay, and welcome to another video. Now this one, I'm not going to say it's different or anything like that. It is Halloween. I've worked to get this one done. I had to work with the people that's involved in it, and it's taken some time. They was a bit unsure about me actually doing this because it involved extended family as well, and we had to get their permission. But this is really bizarre, really creepy, and stick with it to the end. Now this is about a barn conversion that lays just off of Stock Road between Chelmsford and Billericay, and it's really interesting. But before that, anyway, thank you for all the subscriptions, and if you like the videos, keep them coming. As I say, I've got some ones coming up in London coming up soon, so I want to try and get them out during October, so I'm going to try and do my best. But now back to this one. Now this happened in the spring of 1997. Now the only time you're going to really remember this, if you remember How Bop, now that was the comet we see in the sky, and this happened during that time frame. So Claire and Leo recently bought a house just off of Stock Road in Stock, and it had a barn on the outside of the building. Now their building they were living in was actually not in very good condition, and the idea was they were going to do the barn up to a certain condition that they could move into while they redone the house. And this just started to happen when opportunity came up for them to go on holiday to Spain. And at the same time, Claire's sister, who lived in Manchester, had asked Claire if she could use her barn conversion as a sort of stopping point over a weekend while they go to Euro Disney. So Claire's sister was going to come down, stay in the barn for a couple of days, then go off to Euro Disney, come back, stay in the barn with her family before returning back to Manchester. Claire and Leo were fine with this. They did warn them that the barn wasn't quite prepared to be used as a proper sort of house. It did have doors, windows, and it had some heating, but the way that the barn was set out was that from the front door you could go right way through straight to the back door, so there was no sort of kitchen in between. It was all open plan downstairs with a set of stairs that went straight up that led to 3 bedrooms up on the top. Now Claire and Leo had brought the barn, it already started to be developed before they brought it, so the flooring was all flagstone flooring at the time, so it was quite a cold barn. And this was, as I say, this was spring, so it was quite cold weather. On the Friday, Claire's sister Amber and her husband Colin, with their 2 children, which was a girl of 12 and a boy of 10, travelled down from Manchester. And what happened in the morning, Claire and Leo had left, and they put the key outside the barn for her sister to pick up and enter. When Amber went to try and find the key, she found it very difficult, but eventually did find it under a big pile of snails and slugs just down by the doorstep. This creeped her out, and it wasn't really the welcome that she was hoping for when she arrived at the barn conversion. They got inside, and first they noticed how cold and almost bare that the barn was. They knew that again they were only there temporary, and they'd arranged that they would go down to the local pub in the evening to have some food and then come back and spend the evening. They had 2 nights there before they were due to go off to France. So on Friday evening, Amber and Colin left the barn and went over to the local pub. Their children come in tow with them, and they sat down. They had a little bit of food, wasn't really much, it was more basically crisps apparently. They left the pub and the temperature was getting really cold. They went back to the barn. The children went off up the stairs, and it was only about 9 o'clock, and they sat down and they put the television on, and one of the first things that they noticed was this like a rumbling noise in the property, and they thought perhaps it was a boiler that was kicking in for the hot water. But anyway, they settled down on the settee to just watch some television, and it wasn't long when all of a sudden the temperature in the room going from absolutely really freezing, Colin said, become so hot that it was like when you got off a plane in another foreign country and that wave of heat hits you. And it hit him so hard that he started feeling a bit quite faint. At the same time, the children started crying upstairs. Colin looked at Amber and exactly the same. She was looking at him with literally sweat pouring down her face. This wave of heat had taken over the property. And she got up as well to go up and see what the children were like. And she said that she felt really lightheaded. She started walking up the stairs and almost felt like she was going to pass out. Colin overtook her and ran up towards the children. The children sit on their bed, absolutely screaming. And you remember, these are a 10 and 12-year-olds. They're not, easy. They're not young kids. They're not going to get scared at something that simple of just a temperature change. The children turned around and said that they heard voices, loud shouting voices in their bedroom where they were. Now Amber and Colin had been downstairs and didn't hear any sound, but the temperature in the building was getting warmer and warmer and warmer. They bring the children downstairs and all of a sudden the front door blows open, and at the same time the back door blows open. Now remember, the back door didn't open outwards, it opens inwards. So the front door opened in and the back door opened in, letting this icy blast of air just fly through the house. And literally they went from being baking hot to freezing cold. Their bodies were sweaty and that icy cold sort of really woke them up. They stood there, they couldn't work out what had happened. And the children were petrified. Amber sat down on the floor and she was upset herself. She looked at Colin, who was just completely puzzled. Colin's going, I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was. He went round, he checked, because the house was only actually lit by that time as a little fireplace, a little chimney fireplace that went up. They had some pipes coming off. That is the only heat that they had in that property. So the heat that was generated, they could not explain. Eventually the children went back to bed. Amber and Colin decided that they were going to go to bed themselves. Amber was a bit unsure about what had happened, and it freaked her out, and she was hesitating if at the time she was thinking about going off and getting a hotel room. Colin assured her that she was making think up, but what Amber was actually thinking was maybe there was some sort of gas leak in the house. Now Colin assured her that the only gas pipe come in from the back wall and went to a boiler, and it wasn't actually spreading out in the house, and the gas was actually more set on the outside wall, and it wasn't really that possible. Colin couldn't really explain what had happened, but he sort of put to the back of his mind he wasn't going to let it upset the rest of the weekend. They were going away for a really nice weekend. Well, Sunday they were going away for a nice weekend, and they was going away from Sunday to Wednesday, and then they were back in there till the end of the weekend and then go back off home to Manchester. But anyway, they went to bed and nothing really happened throughout the night. Colin woke up early in the morning. He went downstairs and made breakfast. Again, he was looking around the house to see what could have caused the problem. He put a fire on to take the property up, and cooking, it made the room quite warm. Remember that downstairs was completely open planned. While Colin was doing this, he started hearing a noise behind him, and he turned round, and what he sort of hints at was there was like a haze in the middle of the room. And when I say a haze, he said it was like, if you ever get a migraine, which funny enough I had a migraine today, if you ever get a migraine, sometimes you get a wiggly line, that sort of like zigzaggy mark that goes across your eyes. Colin said that's what he could see in the middle of the room. Well, first of all, he rubbed his eyes thinking he was getting a migraine, but the line stayed there. And as it moved across the room, it passed out through the side of the wall. Colin, not really the one to think about paranormal and ghost side of things, thought maybe it's a heat haze. No, the heat he had before the last night, perhaps this was a heat haze that was still hanging around. Maybe that there's something under the floor that was causing it. So Colin got his hands and knees and tapped all over the stone flooring, but the stone flooring was icy cold. So again, he put it to the side and thought nothing more of it. Now during Saturday, the two children, as I guess you're talking about 1997 here, they had a PlayStation and they connected it up to the television, and this would be one of the first PlayStations that was really about. No, actually I think I had a PlayStation 4 in 97. I remember playing Euro 96 on, no, was it Euro 96? Euro 98? Whatever. I remember playing that, so I know they were about around that time. But the two children set up the PlayStation, were playing on the PlayStation, And the son was sitting there and he was playing a game, and all of a sudden he felt something grab him from behind. What he actually describes is that he felt as if two hands went onto his shoulders and yanked him back. He turned around expecting to see his sister standing there, and there was nothing there at all. That was probably quite creepy for a young kid. He ran off to find his mum. Mum was outside. He's screaming, saying, "Someone just pulled me over, someone just pulled me over." Instantly, Amber turns around to try and blame the daughter and finds that the daughter is standing literally in the garden with her and couldn't have been her. Colin was down the supermarket getting some food, so it couldn't have been him. Again, absolutely bizarre what was going on. The young son refused to go back into the house alone. Amber and the daughter come into the house. She assured him she walked around the kitchen. I say, remember, this is open plan, so the kitchen is just at the end of the room. No one around. The young son was really sort of unsettled by this. And again, these are 10-year-olds. My daughter, she's a little bit older now, but even at the age of 10, it wouldn't freak her out as that much as it would have done when she was younger. But at the same time, he knew what he had felt. He felt this person pull him back, turned around, and there's no one there. When Colin come back, they explained what had happened, and Colin's like, "I know, he's making it up. Or, maybe he's playing the game. It made him jump, and he feels silly, and now he's using it as an excuse." So Saturday evening comes, and it starts getting dark outside. Being the beginning of spring, it still gets dark quite early. So they all settle down. Again, they've done dinner, and the children got their books, went upstairs, and we're going to have an early night. They were really excited. The next day is when they were leaving at 8 o'clock in the morning to head off to Disneyland. They did not know what night they were going to suffer before they got to leave for Disneyland. So at 8 o'clock, Amber and Colin are sitting on a settee. The first thing they hear is a scratching on the door. Colin goes and opens up the door, and there's nothing there. Colin goes and sits back down, and the scratching continues. Not only at the front door, but also at the back door. And what Amber describes as a really deep growl coming from the back door. Now, she, again, doesn't really know the area that well. She thinks maybe it could be a neighbour's dog or something like that that's got out. Colin goes to the back door, opens up the back door, and again, there's nothing there. As Colin shuts the back door and turns round, he sees a black shape in the middle of the room. Now, this is about 10 foot in front of him and about 15 foot between him and Amber. He shouts at Amber to turn around and look. She turns around and sees the black shape as well. She screams. Now, instantly, her mind imagined it being a dog. She thought a big dog had rushed in past Colin and was standing in the living room or the open space. She jumped up and ran onto the stairs and was looking through the stair rails at this black shape. Now, she then worked out it wasn't a dog. It wasn't a figure. It wasn't a person. It was just this black shape, this black mass in the middle of the living room. Colin is frozen to the spot, and the black shape just shoots straight through the closed front door and disappears. Amber and Colin are left totally shaken, looking at each other, completely puzzled. What had gone on? Colin goes up, hugs Amber, and says, "I don't know what that was." And this is where later on they start questioning their own sanity, and they question themselves over mass hysteria. So even years later, they still not sure that what they saw, they actually saw, which is, I guess, quite strange when you think of what goes on in the next period of this story. Just seconds after that black shape left the front door, their daughter come running out of her bedroom, shouting that the walls were bleeding. Now, Amber and Colin run up into the bedroom. They sort of have a plausible explanation. Colin went up to the walls, and there was a thick, sticky substance on the walls. Now, the walls were plasterboard over a wooden beam setting. Colin suggests that it's actually sap coming through the gaps in the plasterboard because the property wasn't finished, and that's what we've got to keep in mind on this point. The property wasn't finished, and he said it could be fresh timber and sap is leaking through. That would be okay if the fact that this wasn't happening all over the bedroom. And it was, I guess it was like an ambery red colour, and it was really sticky. So again, that suggests it could be sap. The cats are fighting in my garden. So I have cats or foxes fighting outside my garden. Anyway, so Colin sort of rests assured to Amber and the kids that this is sap and it wasn't nothing bizarre. He leaves them, goes back downstairs, and him and Amber sitting downstairs going, what did we just see? Is that linked? What is going on? We had the temperature, we've had this shape in the living room, and now we've got bleeding walls. And they were sitting there completely puzzled, but Amber's saying to herself, look, we're out of here tomorrow morning and we don't have to come back. No, it's great, we can pack our stuff up, everything we bring, put the car in, we can leave the car at the train station, and we don't have to actually come back here once we come back from Euro Disney. An hour passes and the children are finally falling asleep. Colin and Amber are getting ready to go to bed when the scratching on the door starts again. But this time it's accompanied by banging on the windows. Now the house or the barn isn't joined to anything, and the banging moved from the windows all the way around the building. And at the same time they could hear voices, and they wasn't sure if the voices were on the other side of the wall or if the voices were actually in the living room with them. But the voices were getting louder and louder. They started off with a very, very quiet whisper that you could hardly hear, to the sound of a distant conversation. So we're not talking about very loud, deafening voices. But it was enough to put them off, and with the banging around the walls, and again, they say banging, you can imagine like bang, bang, bang. It wasn't, it was more like a thump on the wall, as if someone had the hand thumping along the wall. And this is happening all the way around the property. Amber is petrified. Colin thinks that there's a group of teenagers outside coming back from the pub on Saturday night, a little bit drunk, and trying to wind them up. Now the house sits back off the main road and down a little sort of lane, I guess you'd call it. So they're not really in the visual sight of people coming back from a pub. Colin's instinct again is to open up the door and see if there's one outside. And again, he opens up the door, there's no one around. He stands out, walks around the barn, and comes back and said there's no one there. As he gets to the front door, he exited the back door, by the way, and then walked round and come through the front door. He's looking at Amber standing about 3 foot inside the front door, and behind Amber is a big, tall, black figure. And what he describes is that it was immense. It was hanging over her shoulders. Now Amber looked completely out of it, almost as if she wasn't really conscious. He grabs Amber and pulls her out the house, not forgetting that they've got their 2 children upstairs. He then runs round to the back door, comes in, and unfortunately he has to go past the front door where the stairs go up there again. So although he's got Amber out, he has to pass this black shape that's standing by the door. As he does so, he said he runs through and it is this intense heat, absolute burning heat as he runs through this black shape. He runs upstairs, he grabs the 2 children and brings them back down. Again, the shape is standing there, and he drags the children through the black shape, again through this immense heat as they go through. He's looking at himself to make sure he's not burnt or anything like that. They stand outside the property and they're looking at each other, and they can't work out what in their life has gone on. They're literally, every single one of them is just stunned to silence. There's no tears, there's no fear, they're just numb. They can't believe what has just happened. They look round into the property. By this time it's all totally clear. Now Colin's like, what do we do? Do we go back in there? And this is where again later on he questions, did it really happen? Is it something that was a gas or something that was in that property that was like a hallucination? Because for him, There was no explanation for what was going on. After a bit of conversation outside, the family decide that they're going to go back in and sleep in the same room upstairs. They'll go back in. Now, it's getting around about midnight at this time. They're all settling down, and Colin hears a noise downstairs. Colin goes to the top of the stairs, and he sees the whole downstairs area covered in black figures, and the voices are all over the place. He goes back to the bedroom, shuts the door, doesn't say anything to the family, gets back into bed, and tries to act really, really calm, thinking to himself, this isn't real. This isn't happening. The girl looks up, the young daughter, and sees what she thinks is black smoke coming underneath the bedroom door. She shouts out, fire! We're on fire. Amber jumps up, opens up the door, and there's big black shapes outside the door. She slams the door. All the walls around the bedroom start vibrating and starts banging. Now, there's one window in the bedroom. The window is forced open, and what Amber and Colin describe is an oversized black burnt hand comes through the window. When I say oversized, I'm not talking gigantic. It was almost like a big swollen hand, but with really pointed fingers, and it was coming through the window where the sun was laying underneath the window. Colin grabs the boy. He was actually asleep. He's broke up in a start, screaming, what is going on? The boy later on turned around and said what he described. He said as he turned round, he see this hand coming through the window, but on the other end of the hand was a burnt body, which he couldn't describe who it was or anything like that, just a burnt body standing outside the window. Now remember, this is not ground level, this is upper level, and it would have been floating around or whatever, but this burnt body was putting his hand through the window. Colin grabs the family into the middle of the bedroom and they huddle together. What they then describe is that the sound of the walls were banging and scratching all around them. The voices were getting very, very loud and intense, and the black figures were coming in through the walls. Colin looks up and Amber looks up, and these figures are surrounding them, literally almost touching their bodies, when all of a sudden they got pulled apart to corners of the room. Then all of a sudden it stops, and everything went back to complete normal, complete quiet, not a noise, not a sound, anything. What was left was lots and lots of what Colin thought was sap all over the bedroom. This sap, or blood, went all the way down the stairs, went all the way through the living room and into the kitchen area. Now, we're not talking about footprints, we're talking about dots, and he said that there is a mass of it, dots all over the place, as if someone's got a paint sprayer and gone in the air and it's all fallen down onto the floor in dot formation. Everything is thick and sticky all the way through to the kitchen. Colin is beside himself. He doesn't know what is going on at all. They get the children downstairs into the living room area. They decide that they can go and sit in their car. They all sit in the car. Colin turns around and looks at the building that looks absolutely peaceful when he sees the figure of a man standing in the barn, just staring through the window, looking at Colin in the car. Colin freezes, turns the engine on and drives to the end of the lane, parks his car out of view of the barn. The next morning they drive down to the train station, leave the car and go off to Euro Disney. They decide that they originally were not going to tell Amber's sister about what happened. Leo and Claire come back from the holiday, had an absolutely fantastic time, full of tan and totally relaxed from a lovely holiday. They open up their property, they go in. The first thing that happens is Leo's feet is sticking to the ground. The whole place is covered in a sticky substance. He turns around and goes to Claire, what did they do while they were here? By this time, Amber's back up in Manchester. Claire jumps up on the phone. Do you know what all this stuff is over the floor? And Claire's going, well, we think it's sap. We think it's sap from the building. And Claire's like, no, we don't know what this is. For the rest of the day, Leo is scraping this sticky substance off of stones off the floor. And he describes it as almost like dry blood, but a sticky dry blood. Again, for me, that indicates it could be sap. I do not know how it could form all over the property itself. But this is where Amber comes clean with Claire over their experience. Claire sits down with Leo, explains what had happened. Leo is totally dismissive of anything like this, and some period of time goes on, and what they decide to do is that the barn conversion is going well, but it's really cold all the time. So Leo decides what he's going to do. He's going to rip the stone flooring up, and he's going to put a wooden flooring down. So one weekend, him and his brother come down and they start lifting up all these great big slabs. They get them out of the house, and they're going to take the footings down around about 3 foot. As they start scraping the soil away from the bottom of the barn, they start discovering skeletons. Not human skeletons, but they found over 120 pig skulls underneath the floor of that building. But burnt pig skulls, as if someone's had a massive fire there to get rid of all maybe carcasses of pigs or something like that. But there's 120 pig skulls under that floor of that barn. I don't know if that's linked with what has happened, but when we're thinking about the temperature, the black shapes, the maybe the voices, maybe these were pigs crying or what, don't know. But that's me trying to put 2 and 2 together. Now, Amber and Colin, who do now live down in Essex, were very hesitant about telling this story. They come to me a few months ago and we wanted to do it, and we wanted to get some filming of the property. And I understand that Leo and that don't live in the property anymore because they could never settle in that property. They never felt comfortable in that property. Nothing really happened of note, but they never felt it was a home, and they felt as if what they said was like they're still renting it on terms of somebody that doesn't exist. So because we don't want to maybe upset the people that now live there, they didn't want me to film the property at all, not even a photograph of it. Amber, they tried to put a rational spin on this, and I get it. They're thinking about a mass hallucination. Maybe there was some freak gas that had got into the building that was making them hallucinate. But it was just interesting that they found this stuff under the ground afterwards, and that Leo never felt comfortable living there. And even though the barn itself is fantastic, you look at it now, I mean, you wouldn't get that age of that property be allowed to be converted into a house no more. I don't think so. No, it was a nice barn beforehand, it was listed, and nowadays the rules are a lot tighter on barn conversions. But yeah, it's a puzzling one. I can't, without going there and have a look around it myself, I can't make a judgment call on it. But Amber, they admit that they experienced this. After a long time of saying maybe it was a mass hallucination, they're willing to accept that something strange did happen. Interestingly, the son, which is a lot older now, he spoke to me and he said, Shane, 100% I see a burnt hand come through that bedroom window, and no one would ever change my mind over that. I see a burnt hand coming through that bedroom window. Fact. So the young son definitely still believes what he see, and he's stuck with him all this time. So again, we want to remember, again, this was a bit of a weird time. We had a comet in the sky, like we do actually at the moment, but I do remember that time. And 97 was a weird year, wasn't it? We had the death of Princess Di, that outbreak of emotions, we had a comet in the sky. I remember going out and just driving around of an evening, coming back from nightclubs and all this sort of stuff, with this comet in the sky, thinking how bizarre it was that we could see this. And it just felt a very, very strange time. Anyway, thank you for watching. Sorry for the lighting setup. Bulbs blue, and so I'm using a ring light. Probably adds a little bit of ambience to this for Halloween. And hopefully I'm filming some extra videos for the London content at the moment. I'm still going to be doing some local stuff. I'm actually doing a walk for charity in Fobbing on ghosts over Halloween as well, and that's all been sold out. I wasn't involved in it, I've just agreed to do the talking, but hopefully that'll go well. And again, thank you for all the comments in the videos, and please remember, I've got a big long catalogue of these paranormal videos on the So You Say playlist on my channel. I don't know how you view my channel when it comes through, but if you go through, there's like nearly 40 videos now of this paranormal stuff on there. And again, it's great to have conversation with you in the messages and keep your ideas coming in and your stories as well. And this was a result of someone reaching out to me and telling me their story, so I really appreciate it. And again, hope you have a really good week, and I hope to see you soon in the next video. Thank you. Bye.